Hello and welcome into the LFC transfer room. Firstly, I must apologise that we are a little bit late. We had a few technical difficulties, and while we was waiting, the superhero that is Jen donated £9.99 there. I would pull your sticker up. Charlie's in the background doing it. We're having proper technical issues today, so do bear with me. Joined today by Richie. It's good to see you again, Richie, Charlie, and Colin. Start with you, Colin. How are you doing today?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad. Get stressed out when we've got technical problems. Enough to work out, but not bad.
Did you recover? You went to Jamie Webster, right?
Yeah, I'm still recovering. Yeah. 2 hangovers at this age now. Richie, how are you doing, mate?
I'm all right. When Matty's only just come on, obviously through technical things, and as soon as you came on, I was like, yeah, he's definitely still recovering there. How was it? I bet it was a blast, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I'm just done in, getting work done in the house. So I've been up early again. I've been able to rest.
Nice. Well, listen, at least you can't go on Twitter because you probably exceeded the 600 limit. So is anyone available to tell us if Szoboszlai's actually signed? Because we have no idea.
I've got about 6 accounts and I have to keep going through them, and I follow all the same people and just refresh. And Charlie, how are you this evening?
Yeah, really good, mate. Really eager to get this conversation going.
Yeah, so we'll start firstly with Goncalo and Dinesh becoming a YouTube member. Don't forget you can join us. If you hit that join button down there, you get loads of benefits and a little badge on your chat as well. But I don't want to butcher his names if anyone else can help me with this. Goncalo, Inacio. Apparently, we're going to be easy. We could easily activate his 38.7 million release clause, and we've shown interest in the sport and player. Start with you, Colin. Release clause FC this summer, isn't it?
Literally, we're just like, okay, went straight down the list, highlighted everybody who had, who has a payable release clause, and it's like, all right, we're just going to hit them one at a time. Yeah, I mean, for the price for the player, I think that's a pretty reasonable buy. I think listen, Gvardiol is incredible, but it's going to take 100. That seems like that's way too steep for our liking. So I think as a reasonable alternative for that, I think that's really good business.
Yeah, he looks like a very strong left centre-back option, which is what we do seem to be looking for this new system, which will probably maybe see the end of Robbo starting week in, week out. He does have 2 senior appearances for the Portugal national team. Richie, do you see much of him? Do you think he's exciting? Do you reckon he's in with the shout? We have a few centre-backs linked this summer, like Van den Ven and stuff like that. So what do you reckon on him? Chances are coming? Do you reckon he's good then?
Yeah, well, I think what goes in our favour is that release clause again. Liverpool have shown that they're not afraid to activate it for the right player or players, as it would be now. I've only seen bits of him. I'm not going to lie and say, I'm an out-and-out fan of, of the league in which he plays in, or see too much of it. But, he is a player who I think fits Liverpool's profile really well and fits what Liverpool need in terms of that centre-back option. Also being young as well. And like I said, that you can get him if he's keen, because there's not going to be a bidding war. I think if even though Gvardiol is he's a Liverpool fan, I think there would still be a bidding war in Leipzig. Whilst we work very, very well with them, it's still in their best interest for Liverpool and City to go toe-to-toe with them. And even though he might very well accept our offer, Leipzig might not accept the first one. And he's a quality player. I really like him. I think he is perhaps the player that Liverpool definitely need. But that being said as well, do Liverpool 100% need a centre-back like they did a midfielder? Perhaps not, with Van Dijk and Konate, covering across for Trent. It'll be interesting to see what happens next, because I think we're all well aware we need another midfielder. Inacio is that centre-back I would personally like to come in and see if it's not, if it's not the Leipzig man. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, absolutely. Inacio is definitely a player who I'd like to see in the Liverpool red.
Yeah, and Charlie, just looking at him here now, he's only 21. He's had 120 senior appearances, 6 of which in the Champions League this year. So he played all the Sporting's games in the Champions League, and then he also had 6 games in the Europa League as well. Across his career, he has scored 11 goals and had 8 assists from the centre-back position as well. So he's not scared of goal, which is decent numbers really for a centre-half. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, just coming back onto the release clause thing is if we look at the 2 players that we have signed this summer, they could easily go for a lot more money. Certainly with McAllister being in the Premier League and his age and his profile and what he's done already in the game. I know it sounds daft, but winning the World Cup, he could easily go for a lot, double the money. And especially, and I think with Sosa, I can't even say his name, Szoboszlai, whatever his name is. I think the point with him is that we triggered the clause because Leipzig were essentially going to be saying that they were asking for more money than what the release clause would have been. So that's I think it's interesting to go with that. I think that's just going to be the same with Inacio as well. So if we're looking at him, and if it is around about the 30 million, 35 million pound mark, or euros, whatever it is, then again it's going to be a bit of a bargain. So these clubs are setting up these contracts with these release clauses, thinking that nothing's going to happen, and Liverpool just going in rubbing their hands, thinking, "Have you got one? Yeah, let's activate it." So it's really interesting that they are doing it. In terms of the profile of the player, it's really, really good. I think Liverpool always look for a certain number of games that a player's played by a certain age, and I think he's very close to that. So having top league experience, especially in Europe as well, and for internationals, it just kind of indicates that he's ready to make that move. Whether he would come in and command a starting place, that's going to be up for debate. I don't think it would be straight away playing every game, every league game, every kind of cup game, and whether it would be a case of he kind of takes Robbo's place. I think that's kind of the interesting one. The formation that we are looking at with Trent kind of moving into midfield, that allows for the centre backs plus the left back to essentially become a free at the back. So if we are having someone that is quite comfortable at the left back position that could then switch into a left-sided centre back, then yeah, that's the aim of the game. I think that's the reason why we're looking at it, and also that long-term kind of replacement for Virgil is going to be interesting as well. So those are my thoughts anyway. But I don't know, what do you think, Madley?
I have not seen anything of him, so I don't really know anything of him. But looking at his stats, they're interesting, to be fair, very interesting. But Colin, Charlie just alluded to about the release clause. Are we running a risk just paying release clauses, because we do know release clauses are paid up front? So this is the first time we've seen FSG spend rumored up £95 million in one window where they aren't spread on the payments. Is that something we should be worried about given their structure of spending habits?
I don't think so, but based on what I had read, it seems like we are using like a third party financier.
Third party, Klarna. Klarna. I don't know if you know about Klarna in America there, Colin.
Yeah. So I actually used to work for Klarna's main competitor here.
Oh, okay.
So I do. I know about the buy now, pay later whole system, but it might be them. Who's to say? They've got the cash. And that's a really interesting way around it, I think. It does seem like that in order to use the third parties, you have to get approval from both leagues in order to go ahead and do that. But as long as it's disclosed, it seems like that hasn't been a problem for any of the leagues, really. I'm sure that they like to see the business be done. I don't think it worries me that much, especially if we're going about it, or we're going to be able to kind of do it in a very like sort of shrewd business way, which is like, you could say good and bad things about that for FSG being shrewd. But I think this in particular instance, like, third party financier, if someone's willing to do it, I think pay the release clause, get your man.
Do you think it could be anything like where we are still selling ultimately 49% of the club? Do you maybe reckon that's done, not being announced, and we're getting the signings in so nobody knows we've got money now?
I wonder if there's not something that's been agreed to that I mean, those sorts of buyouts are negotiated and structured so far in advance from the time that they're announced. There's so much of that legal paperwork and process that needs done. I could see that being the case. I think the rumor was that a lot of that for Liverpool was going to look to be finalized post whatever happens with United. So I wonder if that's something that they kind of have the framework or the structure, and they kind of know what, even if it's not, the whole way across the line, they kind of know what they'll be getting, and kind of base it on what they expect to be getting going forward.
Yeah. On Inacio, Richie, I know you like stats. Is stats going forward are very, very, very good against other players in this position, like 99th percentile for the vast majority of them. Whereas defensive stats, such as like his tackles, he's only like the 64th percentile for tackles attempted and 57th for tackles won. Does that concern you? That he's so good, but not that good defensively?
I mean, the first thing you want from your centre backs, it's one of those that, you've got to be good with the ball at your feet. You've got to do this, and the other. But at the same time, the first thing you want from a goalkeeper is, can they catch the ball, can they save? And for a defender, you want your defenders to be able to defend. However, FBref go off the past 365 days, don't they? And I'm not too sure whether or not in the Premier League he actually has to make that many tackles. Perhaps I think that's maybe why it might be a little bit lower. If we look at, Lisandro Martinez in the Premier League, he's probably in just a ballpark figure in the top 90, if not 95 percentile, because he's having to make more tackles because of the way in which Manchester United play. They're quite attacking now, quite counter-attacking. So he's probably having to make more tackles per 90. And that's what these statistics are based on, is per 90. So the fact he's only making 1.48 tackles a game is more so maybe he doesn't need to make them, especially if he's moving forward with the ball, as you said, because you're spot on, bang on the money. Progressive carries for centre backs, like 99th for 7th percentile. So it seems like his role is obviously to be the last line of defence, and his role is to tackle, but it's also perhaps to carry the ball forward for Sporting, who, again, they've had a really good couple of seasons, haven't they? They came first, second and fourth in the past 3 seasons. So maybe that's why he's not making as many tackles. But from what I've seen of him, he's not shy of a tackle, as you'd expect from centre-backs. And, you don't get into that Portuguese team, the national team, without being able to do that at 6'1" as well. He's going to be an absolute monster. So great that he's good with the ball at his feet. Great that he's got the goals and the assists, and he can carry the ball, because we know that, Van Dijk and Konate, especially Matip, can do that. So for him to come in and be able to do that too is going to be great. I think maybe a stat that we could probably try to look at is his missed tackles, because I think that would perhaps be the one to indicate, actually what he's like at tackling over 90. How many on average does he miss, rather than actually how many does he make? Because he probably doesn't have to make that many for Sporting.
Yeah. And Charlie, finally, do you think this is our number one centre-back target, or do you think he's maybe a bit of a cheaper option with his release clause being around the 30 million, because we have had to trigger release clauses for like Szoboszlai and stuff?
Yeah, I don't think he's our number one target. I think for the price option, and the value you get for that probably comes into what we would like. But in terms of targets, Colwill, you have Gjalvadal. They're probably the top 2 picks, but their clubs aren't willing to sell, or if they are, they're going to be asking for anything up to 100 million. So it's not really in the ballpark that we play at the moment, unless we are thinking about that investment chat. Is there something behind that? Who knows? Or is there some type of deal that we could work out with Leipzig because of the good relationships? Who knows? But either way, I don't think he's the number one target. I think he's a very good option, and he can allow us to do a lot more things in the side, and it will progress over the next few years. So who knows what would happen. I think the main thing is midfield.
Just to go on the stats, I have just found his tackling percentage. So last season, he won 56% of his tackles, and the season before that, he won 65%. So he wins more than he loses. And again, that is across the Premier League.
Yeah, I think maybe is he that type of player? I know it's a really bad comparison, but when we think about like that attacking defender, Lovren, who's very much the front foot kind of, and he's a front foot defender that would go out of his box and to try to defend to get the ball, whereas he has that kind of sweeper behind him to allow him. I think that's maybe, is he that type of player? Maybe that's the question that we should consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what Max said, his successful take-on percentage, so the amount of times he's actually dribbled past someone is 85%, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
You know, and the season before was 77%. He only has, last season, when he tried to take someone on, he only got tackled 10% of the time. So again, he can certainly dribble with the ball, as Matty said.
Comment here from Univercoin 66. Would you rather have Mickey van der Ven or Inacio? How do you say his name? I don't have a clue. I've seen either of them. Hope they come in and be decent. Not asked, really. I know I trust Klopp. But yeah, there's 155 people in here. Do not forget to leave a like and a subscribe on the stream. It goes a long way. You may not think it does anything, but it makes a massive, massive difference to the channel, and you'll also not miss out on our daily streams. And moving on, Khephren Thuram. Looked all but done. Apparently, you've got to wait till after the under-21 Euros to buy players if you're Liverpool, even though other clubs have bought players. But now, apparently, Newcastle are considering him as an alternative to Szoboszlai. I need to get that name right. You know, I've been watching videos.
Szoboszlai, is it? Szoboszlai.
It's so hard. But Newcastle are looking at Thuram. I'm not really concerned because, as we've seen with Szoboszlai, he's legged them to come to Liverpool. Europa League doesn't really matter when you're in Liverpool and you've got Jurgen Klopp. But Colin, I'll put it to you. Are you worried because he has had a fantastic Euros and now other clubs are sniffing and it's not officially done with us yet?
Maybe I should be more worried than I am. I'm not super concerned. At this point, because the Szoboszlai deal came from sort of nowhere out of, 3 days, I feel like we have, now that we have this one and it looks like it's going to be, finished up and by tomorrow, I'm not as concerned anymore. All of a sudden that kind of puts us, I feel like, a little more forward and a little more in a driver's seat in terms of targets and things that gives us more flexibility if Thuram decides for Newcastle and that's where that's where he would like instead. I think we have more options then to go and find the secondary targets then. Not as concerned at the moment.
What about you, Rich? Are you concerned? Do you think it could maybe be the agent talk? Because we do know when we originally opened talks with Thuram, Nice wanted more money, wanted a bit more. Is this then maybe leaking? Oh, Newcastle are coming in to make Liverpool panic and add a few more million onto the deal.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Nice, you never wanted to sell him before the Euros, are you? Because after seeing him at the Euros, he has done very, very well for himself. And if you're that selling club, you're on the world stage, with no other football going on. People are tuning into the under-21 Euros and people are seeing what a player he is. And if there's two ways to look at it. Either personal terms have been agreed with Thuram from Liverpool. He's set. Liverpool aren't sweating it. Okay, you go to the Euros, we'll negotiate and we'll see you after the Euros. Or it's that bidding war, that Nice want, and nothing's been sorted. But a lot of people do seem very confident that Thuram has agreed terms. I think Newcastle have obviously only come in because of the Szoboszlai, coming to us. And we know Newcastle were in the race because there were so many accounts saying that Newcastle had dropped out. I think Fabrizio himself said that Newcastle had dropped out. So who's your next player? Well, Thuram, that who's on the market for that. It fitting that profile was a Khephren Thuram. And for me, he was Thuram when we first were linked to all of these hundreds of names. I actually wanted Thuram perhaps over McAllister as our first signing, just because I felt like we had to get Thuram over the line first because there would be more clubs interested in. But if Liverpool want him, Liverpool will get him. We saw it with Szoboszlai, we saw it with McAllister. We've seen it so many times over the years. These lads are going to come in and perhaps win a trophy in the first season, at least one, and they're going to do that with Liverpool. That Dublin final, Matty and I have got ferry tickets. You're all welcome to join us. We'll be there partying on the ferry over to over watching the Europa League final. But the pull of Liverpool is second to none, apart from perhaps, unless you're going for the money of Manchester United or Manchester City. I think that the pull of Liverpool, even now with Europa League football, is far greater than a Newcastle, even with all of their riches and millions. And there's a reason why Szoboszlai and Thuram perhaps will come to us over Newcastle, and that's purely because of Jurgen Klopp as well. Let's be honest, the pull that man has is absolutely incredible. So yeah, we'll see. It's interesting that Newcastle are in for him. I think they definitely need a player after missing out on Maddison. They definitely need someone in that midfield to bolster their midfield, perhaps two of them. It's going to be a tricky season for Newcastle with Champions League football as well. So fair play to them and fair play to Nice, because if this was Liverpool selling, I definitely wouldn't want to sell straight away, and I'd want to create a bidding war after the under-21 championships.
Charlie, do you think for if he comes to Liverpool, it'll be our last midfield signing? Because I think Szoboszlai maybe is instead of Kone, given his injury, even though I'm much more excited to have him than Kone, I must admit. But do you think because we are linked to like Lavia and stuff as well, or do you think Thuram's the smoke screen and we're working on Lavia behind the scenes? Because we've been linked to both of them, and can we expect to get both of them and a centre half, or will it be one or the other? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one or the other. I think Thuram is more further down the line than we may expect. I think there may be an agreement already in place, at least a gentleman's agreement, handshake agreement kind of thing, with Nice to say after the Euros, as long as he's fit, we'll come back and then put the money on the table. I think we've seen with Kone, I think unfortunately the lad's going to be out for a few months with his knee injury, and that kind of just proves the point of not jumping the gun and trying to get signings in before kind of major tournaments. If it happens, then and the player gets an injury, a bad injury, we've seen it before. I mean, think about Karius when he first came. I know we don't want to talk about Karius, but the whole point of him coming in, breaking his hand in the first few weeks of training, being at the club, that kind of puts him back, and whatever impact, kind of sliding doors impact that could have had on him. Same with any type of player that gets injured during the summer. It's going to be really interesting. But yeah, coming back to your question though, Matty, I think it would be the last midfielder. If we do sign, either Thuram or Lavia, I don't think we'll be going for Viega. I don't think it's the type of player that we actually need right now. I think we've got an abundance of attacking talent. I'm really, really excited to see kind of how Curtis gets on, how Elliott, those players in the new season, and then we just focus on a defender.
I have a question for you guys about Thuram in particular, which is that if they Nice try to push for a bidding war, what's a number that you guys think you would be comfortable with Liverpool getting the deal done at?
It's not my money, Colin, so I'd say whatever he wants. To be fair, he's. I didn't know nothing about him until we were linked with him, and I've looked into him and stuff since we've been linked, and he looks like an absolute monster. And is the way he carries the ball in the midfield, it's like putting Joel Matip on them mad runs, but start in the midfield, and he's fantastic going forward. He just looks like a beast in the midfield, and the future of our midfield would be sorted then. So that panic of what's next for Liverpool, you'd have three midfielders all under the age of 25, all extremely, extremely talented, a World Cup winner in there, and it doesn't look so bleak for us then after that. So probably 45, 50 mil maybe. I'd agree with Charlie's comment there, to be fair.
40 to 45 billion. I think he hasn't played international football for the senior team. I don't think he has. Kind of breakthrough season. I know he's young, very raw in that sense. Not the finished product, so can't see why we would spend anything above 45, 50 million for the kid.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think that's about right. For anywhere between 45 and 50 max. If you can get him cheaper, absolutely, fantastic. But he's I really rate him from what I've seen of him. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. Like, again, he's a ball carrier. He's someone who's going to take somebody on. He's progressive. He's not bad defensively either, and he is an absolute monster. He's an absolute unit. Liverpool building a really tall team. We was talking about Inacio earlier. He's 6'3" Thuram. So, again, another monster who's only 22 years of age. So, listen, if Nice want a bit more, that's fine. But Liverpool have a ceiling, and so do Newcastle. If I'm honest, Newcastle aren't at the point yet where they can throw around 80 to 90 million on players who are worth half that value. And I think Liverpool and Newcastle are both shrewd in what they do. They're not going to go up against each other and just go, okay, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. The sensible thing to do will be to ask the player, well, who do you want to join? What do you think? Okay, you both, okay, well, both of us then, we're going to bid this, take it or leave it, Nice, because at the end of the day, the player wants out. So there is a lot more player power now.
Yeah. There is over 200 of you in here. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Like I said before, it is so important. It helps us out loads. Does the algorithm good, and it means you can get even better guests. And Rudy Galletti, which is the Italian journalist, said Liverpool are speeding up the pursuit of Khephren Thuram. He is hit and miss. Make of that what you will, but it has been the journos that are hit and miss that are breaking all the transfers before anybody else this summer. So maybe there is something in that. The Echo was also said today, another hit and miss source, but they've said Liverpool's summer won't stop there after the sign of Szoboszlai, which is interesting, isn't it, Colin? Because I know Sky Sports in the UK was saying that Liverpool were working under financial restrictions just a day before we bought a £70 million midfielder. So do you think there's legs to that? The summer's not going to stop? Or because the last time Liverpool spent this amount of money on a player was Van Dijk and Alisson times, and that was the Coutinho money. So do you think we'll slow down again now for a few weeks, or do you think we're still working to that deadline of the day one of pre-season when Klopp wants everyone in by, which I think was July 8th, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it's coming. The date's coming soon. That report struck me as like, and I saw this from, I think it was Rob Gutman from the Anfield Wrap tweeted this about like that statement about being under financial restriction is like, yeah, so isn't everybody. Like that, it seems that's like a non-statement to get clicks and headlines. And that really, I thought that resonated with me. I was like, this seems like an obvious. I don't think it's going to stop. I think they're going to really push for, seems like at least 2 more. And if they push for, maybe if they're pushing really hard for 3 and it only ends up with 1 more, then you say, okay, well, like we really tried, and it, we didn't get the guys that we wanted. And Jurgen's made that pretty clear that they're going to try to get the guys that they want, and they're not going to force it just to get someone in, and then try again for either for that person or for a new target when it gets to the next window. I think at this point they're going to push forward and push on with it.
Yeah, because what do you think, Richie? I mean, Szoboszlai has obviously landed. He is having his medical. I'd probably go as far as saying if Elon Musk hadn't broke Twitter, it might have got announced at 8 p.m. tonight. Do you think the summer's coming to a close, or do you think there's a lot more incomings, or maybe 1 or 2?
I think we only need 1 or 2, don't we? Like, if I'm completely honest, two's the dream. Another midfielder and a centre half. If we're being really, 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 really greedy, perhaps cover for Salah. But we've got 5 forwards, and who's going to want to come and sit on the bench and go, actually, yeah, you are behind Salah, but we just bought you for the sake of it because we need someone else to come in for Salah. So I think, a centre back and a midfielder is absolutely brilliant. And this is, I think, a little bit of frustration really from the fan base that it has been for many, many years is Liverpool. Obviously, it would be great if we had unlimited money from an absolute legendary owner who made all of the money himself, a self-made billionaire who was also giving money to charity and wasn't like an oligarch. Football and life doesn't work like that, I'm afraid. So the frustrating part for us, and I think for many years, has been Liverpool never, ever need a Galactico to come in. It would have been lovely to get Bellingham, don't get me wrong, and he would have been that Galactico. He would have been that statement player. I think Van Dijk was perhaps our last statement player, if I'm completely honest, and that's because we needed him. And Klopp was willing to wait. But for so many years, we have only needed one or two players. It's only this summer, because of the neglect and because of, I don't know, it might even be Klopp himself saying, well, I didn't get Tchouaméni, so I'm going to wait for Bellingham. And I don't want any other midfielder, even though we know the likes of Bruno Guimaraes was available. And I think perhaps this time, if we get it right this summer, next summer, we're looking at 2 or 3 players to come in, bar anything really bad happening, you know? And that's the frustrating part, I think, for a lot of Liverpool fans, is that this seems like a massive summer rebuild, but it probably didn't need to be a massive summer rebuild if we got it right in the past few transfer windows anyway. So Liverpool are perhaps righting the wrongs of the past couple of years, and whether that's Klopp or FSG or both, you know, that's something that had to happen. But I would love to be in a position where we don't have to go through this summer again. I'd love to be in a position where we don't need 4 or 5 players. We just need 1 or 2 and we get them over the line early. In terms of the 8th of July deadline, which is when pre-season starts, France under 21s play Ukraine under 21s tomorrow at 8 p.m. Now, I'm not writing Ukraine off, but you would expect France perhaps to get through to that. And then they go into the semi-finals, and they are both on the 5th of July and the finals on the 8th. So even if Thuram doesn't come in on the 8th, I don't think it's the end of the world. Obviously, he'll have a couple of weeks off anyway because of a bit of a rest. But, Gini didn't come in until midway through July, and I think he started something ridiculous like the first 5, 6, 7 games for Liverpool. So, I don't think Thuram would be a nailed-on starter for day one anyway, if I'm honest, for the opener. So the pre-season stuff doesn't necessarily, it'd be lovely to get it all done, and I'm sure Klopp would love to have his feet up and drinking a beer over pre-season and saying, yeah, all my business is done. But I don't think it's the end of the world if it's not.
What about you, Charlie? The interesting thing is with Dominik Szoboszlai coming in and what looks like Thuram, that's Liverpool's non-homegrown players then maxed out. So centre-back who could come in would be an English playing centre-half or a homegrown centre-half of any of the, obviously, the home nation. So that changes things a little bit, doesn't it? Because then it makes you think, if we are going to do any business further than Thuram and Szoboszlai, it has to be homegrown players. Or do we then wait? Or you could then got the alternative of having a homegrown keeper from the academy as your third choice, because Adrian's only staying as ultimately like the Andy Lonergan that we had when we won the league this season. So why do we need to register Adrian? Because it'd only be extreme circumstances that you'd need to play in the league, wouldn't it?
I think, how old is Inacio? Isn't he 19?
21.
21. Okay, so yeah, so we wouldn't have to count him as a non-homegrown player because he's under the age of 22.
I think it does go like that, yeah. I'm not sure. Jones does a homegrown one this year, but he's 21, 20. But I think you can count him if the younger as homegrown.
Yeah. They could be 22, but as long as they were,
they played 3 seasons.
Of January. And well, it's under 21 rule is from the 1st of January that year, if that's that they count. So that's what the rule is. Yeah, it's a little bit grey, it's a little bit murky, but
no, well that's it. It's an interesting one. If we were to get all our targets, we haven't really spoken about people leaving. I know we've seen a lot of players leave for free.
Can anyone go though? Anyone who's in register, can we afford to let any of them go?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Who's our kind of bankable star that we could make some money on and not miss as much? Who's out there?
He's the only one that, to me, that
Tsimikas,
if you get a left-sided center back in, like Andy Robertson already kind of doesn't make sense as playing left center back. Why have 2 squad players that both don't make sense playing left center back?
Yeah,
you could get 20 for him. You could get 15. Like there's someone who plays 4 at the back or a wing back that would be happy to take him, I think.
Yeah. They go. Yeah.
All our players, I could take from everyone else's. Why aren't they bidding like 60 million for Joel Matip?
Yeah.
That's doing. But does that make you any of you worried now, though, that Lavia could be the one we bring in? If, for example, the centre-back we wanted was non-homegrown, that would rule out Thuram, and Lavia would then be a homegrown option. So
I'm wondering if those are the two scenarios that we're playing with, is like we're waiting to see what happens with Thuram. And if that doesn't happen, or if that does happen, then we'll have to go for a English center back or sell someone. And then inversely, if we don't get Thuram, then it goes Lavia, who would not count. And then we can go for an international center back.
If it meant if it meant you got Thuram and Cole, is that the best option, really? Because you're then filling it and getting your homegrown. Or
Colwell would be brilliant. Colwell's a fantastic player. He'd be such a good player.
Yeah.
Whether he would be prepared to come to Liverpool and play left back, left-sided centre back in that kind of three, I'm sure he would. But if we are kind of sticking with the old format, straight back, forward to back, then and he kind of bide his time, played the odd match. I don't think he would want to go back to Chelsea because he knows he's not going to get a game. But whether we could command, whether we could get him from Chelsea is just a completely different question. Now, I know they're desperate for money, but would they be willing to let go?
The thing is with Chelsea, they're selling these players to their rivals. They've sold Mount to United, Kovacic to City. We've seen the dealings that flipping Chelsea and Arsenal do between each other. I don't think Chelsea would batter an eyelid about selling,
really,
Colwell to us, if I'm honest. But it's
how
just
much?
How much exactly?
What does it take to get
that
it done?
English, it's that English tax that you're going to have to pay on top of it as well. Yeah. And it's for us, it's perfect because he's homegrown, he's young, he's versatile, he's everything that we need. But there is still a budget. I know that we've gone a little bit mad recently over this 95 million, but there is still a budget there to be had. And if Thuram is going to cost 45, 50 million, Lavia is going to cost the same as well. I know that there were rumours about a 250 million pound war chest. I'm not too sure how true that is, but hopefully we'll be proven wrong. I would expect Chelsea to want between 60 to 70 million, and I can't really see Colwell at the minute being that player. And Inacio turns 22 on the 25th of August as well. So, that would take up a spot. So I think it would probably be, again, this is a question for you guys. Do Liverpool need all those centre-backs? Could we afford to let Gomez, Matip go? Because Konate and Van Dijk will obviously stay. So could we, if another one comes in, surely one of Gomez or Matip goes if Tsimikas doesn't?
What is interesting, I've just seen a comment about the photo shoot. Matip was involved in that away photo shoot, but I didn't see much of Gomez. So I think that would be the one I think he's got the most value in him, hasn't he? If you were to sell Joe Gomez, you're going to get more for Gomez, who's still, if he got back into full fitness and full form, is probably one of England's best centre-halves.
Yeah. And I'm absolutely certain that there are clubs out there in the Premier League that would snap him up. I'm sure they definitely see the player in him. It's unfortunate with around the injuries that he's had. So there's definitely a player in there. Just needs to get his head right.
Literally pick any of the 12 lowest sides, and I think any of them would be thrilled to take him.
That's the same as Matip, I think, as well. Like, I think anyone would take Joel Matip. Any of the bottom 10. I think Matip's a quality player. I really like him. But Liverpool do have a little bit of an issue with him. I think next year his contract expires, same as Thiago as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if a bid came in for Thiago from Saudi. I said earlier, Thiago is still our best midfielder when fully fit. So the thought for me of selling Thiago when he is our best player, I'd even go so far as to say technically, it does sort of send shivers down you, but he can't be relied upon. He is a luxury. He is a Rolls-Royce player. And I think now with, let's say, Mac, Szoboszlai, Curtis Jones, all in those, hopefully Thuram in those positions, then he can just come in and play. Hey, he does. He can just come in and play. So it's going to be an interesting one. Who goes out? And I think that Thiago, Matip, Gomez. I think those three and Tsimikas could go to very good teams still.
With
I mean,
Thiago, I want him so much to stay this season because this is the first season that we've had Thiago and we can use him as a luxury. We can save him for the City games, the United games and stuff. We've never had that with Thiago before, and I think if we use him sporadically in the games you need them, you'll get a full season out of him. With the right, if we were to get Thuram in, you could argue Liverpool probably got one of the strongest midfields in the league, going from the weakest to the strongest in one summer.
Yeah.
And that's how we should have always used Thiago as well, is that player not to play every 90 minutes. You know, that's how we should have used him. Should have used him sparingly and when needed, and keeping him fit so that when he does come on, he is that Thiago who is sensational. He's phenomenal, rather than the Thiago who we run into the ground. You know, and then he is picking up these injuries. So I would love him to stay. And do you know what? I wouldn't even care if he left next year on a free. I'd just wish him all the best of luck in the world and just say that's one of the best players in modern times who's put on that Liverpool red.
Yeah. We'll probably leave it there for today. Probably maybe come back on if Szoboszlai's announced. I reckon he'll be announced tomorrow now, though, because Twitter's broke. Don't forget, if you are in the stream, leave a like and a subscribe on it. It goes a long, long way for us. Do go and check out as well our podcast, which we've just had Clive Tilsley on. That was a phenomenal. Is it Clive Tilsley? I am right to say.
He was, yeah.
It was a phenomenal guest. Damon and Chris interviewed them, and Chris was made up, someone he's looked up to his whole career. And more numbers means more subscribes and stuff. We'll get better guests on the podcast and that. So it's a win-win for your content to anyone watching. But if you are new yet, leave a like, please subscribe. I've been Matt. You've been joined by Colin, Richie, and Charlie. Thank you, gents, for coming on as always. And let's hope next